Hagakure, The Secret Wisdom of the Samurai, by Yamamoto Tsunetomo, translated by Alexander Bennett. This is a book summary. The wind stirs through an ancient forest, rustling the autumn leaves. A lone samurai walks through misty fields, his silhouette fading into the twilight. In the dead of night, beneath the flickering glow of a single candle, a forgotten warrior sits in solitude. His brush moves across the parchment with quiet precision, recording the wisdom of a bygone era. This is not the story of war, but the echoes left behind, the whispers of honor, duty, and the razor-thin line between life and death. This is Hagakure, The Hidden Leaves, a book of shadowed wisdom, concealed within the folds of history, waiting to be discovered. To understand Hagakure, we must travel back to a time when Japan was changing. The early 18th century, a world where the samurai, once the fiercest warriors on the battlefield, were now little more than administrators in an era of peace. Imagine the frustration, generations of men raised to fight, trained in the way of the sword, now reduced to signing documents and enforcing laws. The warrior class, once bound by blood and battle, was drowning in bureaucracy. The question burned in their minds: if a samurai no longer fights, then what is he? Yamamoto Tsunetomo, a retainer of the Nabeshima clan, feared that the true essence of Bushido, the warrior's code, was slipping into oblivion. And so, in the final years of his life, he spoke. And his words were recorded not as a military strategy, but as a philosophy, a way of life, a way of death. Because this book is not just about war, it is about how to live, and more importantly, how to die. What is Hagakure? A dimly lit room, an ancient manuscript spread open on a wooden desk. Hands gently turn the yellowed pages, revealing rows of elegant kanji, the words glowing faintly in the candlelight. The title Hagakure translates to Hidden by the Leaves, a poetic name that captures the secretive, almost mystical nature of its teachings. Compiled by Tashiro Tsurumoto, a young samurai seeking guidance, the book contains over 1,300 aphorisms, short reflections on the way of the warrior, spoken by Tsunetomo after he retired to a life of seclusion. But why did he retreat from the world? Why did he choose to live in isolation? The answer lies in his greatest regret. Tsunetomo was once a loyal retainer to Lord Nabeshima Mitsushige, and when his lord passed away, Tsunetomo was forbidden to follow him into death. The practice of jonshi, where a samurai commits ritual suicide upon his master's passing, had been outlawed. Stripped of the only way he could prove his loyalty, Tsunetomo did the next best thing. He disappeared. He withdrew from the world, but not before leaving behind the teachings of his heart. And so, Hagakure was born, not as a book of war strategies, but as a guide for warriors in a time of peace. A book for those who still carried the soul of the samurai, even when the age of battle had passed. But make no mistake, peace did not mean weakness. The samurai of Tsunetomo's time were expected to uphold their values as fiercely as they would wield a sword. Honor, duty, loyalty, and above all, an acceptance of death. Because, as Hagakure states in its most famous passage, the way of the warrior is found in dying. The way of the warrior is found in death. But what does that really mean? Is it a call for reckless self-destruction? A glorification of death? A mindless surrender to fate? At first glance, it sounds extreme, even dangerous. But to Yamamoto Tsunetomo, this was not about seeking death, it was about embracing it before it arrived. A samurai, he believed, must walk the earth as if he were already dead. Only then could he act without hesitation, without fear, without attachment to the outcome. Tsunetomo had seen what hesitation could cost. He knew that in battle, a moment's doubt could mean death. And in life, indecision could be worse than failure. So he thought that a warrior must already consider himself a ghost. A man who had died long ago and had nothing left to lose. This was not nihilism. It was clarity. It was the understanding that when death is no longer feared, action becomes pure. A warrior can move forward with absolute conviction. He does not waver. He does not second-guess. He commits fully and completely. And yet, this philosophy extended far beyond the battlefield. To Tsunetomo, Bushido was not just about war, it was about life. A samurai must live every moment as if it were his last. He must pour his entire being into his duty, his actions, his words, because when you know that time is fleeting, when you understand that tomorrow is never promised, only then can you truly be free. Loyalty beyond death. In Hagakure, loyalty is not just a virtue. It is the defining trait of a samurai. A warrior does not exist for himself. His life belongs to his lord, to his clan, to the code that binds him to something greater. This was not mere obedience. This was giri, a duty that transcended personal desire, a commitment so deep, so absolute, that even death would not sever it. Tsunetomo lamented that in his time, the old ways of loyalty were fading. He feared that warriors were becoming weak, that they hesitated when action was required, that they served with their minds, but not with their hearts. True samurai, he argued, should be willing to give their lives without a second thought. Not because they were ordered to, but because their devotion was total. This idea of total, unwavering loyalty shaped Japan for centuries. It created heroes. It forged legends. And yet, it also led to tragedy. The same principles that bound samurai to their lords inspired the kamikaze pilots of World War II, young men who believed that the ultimate act of duty was to sacrifice themselves for their country. But it also forces us to ask a question. How far should loyalty go? Is devotion always noble, or can it become dangerous? In today's world, personal freedom is celebrated. We are taught to think for ourselves, to carve our own paths. The idea of absolute loyalty can seem outdated, or even oppressive. But Hagakure challenges us to look deeper. It asks us, what do we stand for? What principles would we give everything to defend? Because in the end, it is not just about who we serve, it is about why we serve. And that is the true way of the warrior. So, is Hagakure just an ancient relic, a dusty book from a bygone era, meant only for warriors, long forgotten? Or does its wisdom still whisper to us, guiding our choices in a world far removed from the way of the samurai? The truth is, Hagakure is not just a book about swordsmanship or feudal loyalty. It is a book about mindset, about how to live, and perhaps most importantly, how not to waste a single moment of life. Here are 3 key lessons from Hagakure that still hold power in today's world. 1. Live in the moment. Action over hesitation. Yamamoto Tsunetomo warns us of the greatest enemy of all, not failure, not defeat, but hesitation. He writes, if one is faced with 2 options of life or death, simply settle for death. It is not an especially difficult choice. Just go forth and meet it confidently. But this isn't about reckless self-destruction. It's about decisiveness. In a world where we second-guess ourselves, where overthinking paralyzes action, Hagakure tells us to commit fully, to step forward without fear of the outcome. Because hesitation is worse than failing, it is never trying at all. The way of the warrior teaches us that the present moment is all we have. Thinking too much of failure clouds the mind. But when we act with resolve, when we accept that we are already dead to our doubts, only then can we move forward without regret. 2. Duty over ego, devotion to a greater purpose. In Hagakure, duty is the essence of the samurai spirit. Tsunetomo says, to serve with selfless devotion is the highest form of loyalty. A warrior does not exist for himself, but for his lord, his people, and the honor of his house. But what does this mean for us today? While blind loyalty can be dangerous, the idea of dedicating yourself to something greater, whether it's your family, your craft, or your principles, brings true purpose. Too often we focus on personal gain. But Hagakure teaches that true fulfillment does not come from serving only ourselves. It comes from giving, from fully dedicating ourselves to something beyond our own desires. Whether it's through work, family, or community, there is strength in serving a cause greater than oneself. 3. Embrace mortality. Find freedom in acceptance. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Hagakure is this. Do not fear death. Accept it. Tsunetomo writes, meditation on inevitable death should be performed daily. Every morning, a warrior should imagine himself pierced by arrows, cut by swords, lost in the flames of a great fire. And when such a time comes, he will be prepared. This does not mean we should seek death, but that we should stop fearing it. Because when we stop fearing death, we stop fearing life. We stop delaying our dreams. We stop avoiding hard choices. We start living, fully and unapologetically. When we embrace mortality, we stop wasting time. We stop hesitating, and that is when we truly begin to live. In the end, Hagakure is not just about the past. It is not just about samurai. It is about mindset, about action, about choosing to live without fear, with purpose, and with resolve. A modern warrior tying their black belt, a surgeon preparing for a critical operation, a student standing up against injustice, a firefighter racing toward danger, not away from it. Because whether you wield a sword or a laptop, the way of the warrior can still guide you. The principles of Bushido are not dead. They live in every person who dares to act with courage, honor, and unwavering resolve. So I ask you, what is your Bushido? What code do you live by? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through the warrior's path, don't forget to like and subscribe for more wisdom from the past.